You know how I said I was working on my debut and all that? Well, halfway through I got bored and just decided, screw it, let's do something cool and easy and fun instead. So, here's a quick informational to help catch you up to speed. This is Malictory in 60 seconds? Nah, too short. 120? Too long. Seconds. This is Malictory in seconds. My name is Malictory. I'm a candy-obsessed robot from the land of hipsters where coffee and computers rain down from the heavens, like that one attack in Chrono Trigger. Riveting, isn't it? I like JRPGs and platformers, and occasionally I like to translate J-pop songs that go crashing through windows for using what I learned in college. This space, this, and the next one serve as my digital sanctuary from the dangers outside. Yeah, they're freaky. The sun's a demon, I tell you. Did I mention the pastel and pink puffball love and puffy chi made all these backgrounds? Aren't they a sight? Hey, get off there, you.
Whee!
It's got kind of an urban festival vibe going on, and I hear anyone who vibes with it falls into what I like to call addiction fiction, where they like to wander around and blabber on like an audio form of sugar consumption or something. Never mind that though, let's talk something fun, like what gets these brainwaves spiking. Like I said a few seconds ago, I've got a thing for games, mainly hyper-saturated JRPGs like Bravely Second, Dragon Quest III, Persona Q, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, Legend of Mana, Undertale Yellow, blabbity blabbity blah. But I also dig platformers that keep us heart bouncing like I just took anti-sleeping meds before school. Yeah, don't do that. Like Plock, High Seas Havoc, Mega Man Zero, 2D Sonic games, Ahead in Time, and so much more. I also get hard-eyed for shoujo anime like some parasocial fan of, insert idol name here and let's move on. Kinda like Nana, Full Moon no Sagashite, Hanakimi, Tamon's B-side, etc, etc, etc. Then there's my one true love in the sound department, J-pop. Without minds like Aimyon, Yonezu Kenshi, Zutomayo, Ado, Sangatsu no Fantasia, Nano Akari, Lon, Aokumo, Yoasobi, Higedan, Rei, formerly of Tsuyu, Rial, just to name a few. I think I just yanked these ears off like I was in a game of Saw. Then there's books that are set in Normie Land but with a touch of whimsy, like Smiles to Go, Mosquito Land, Ready Player, maybe not that one, Marigold Mind Laundry, They Both Die at the End, and more etceteras. Okay, I get it. I need to read more books. I'm slowly losing brain cells as I mindlessly scroll on Twitter, a slave to the slap generator that chains me down from all that I want. I also like VTubers. I've stand a ton since I found out about them during the pandemic, from corpos to indies, and there's a flavor for every single person on the planet. Yes, even them. Hey, I've got models too, you know. Like this 3D model made by Gremlin Magica 4 years ago. She's a chaotic connoisseur who makes ghoulishly great works, and they even made 2 revisions in the years that followed. 1 year later, I got a micro Kit Kat-sized one by Rika of the wholesome sister duo Ecotone, with rigging by Kebby the Rat, a skilled worker from super south, but not too south. Nobody likes that chill. Of course, there's this silly attempt at a Kokashi, Fokashi? That I actually drew myself in 2024. And finally, in 2026, with the help of painting expert extraordinaire Lady Kamini and on-the-dot rigging mastery by Potechi, we now have a model that I'd love to show off today. But not yet. Before that, don't you wonder what kind of goals some brainlet robot like me even has? Bet you weren't expecting me when I needed 1,000 submarine sandwiches, or injecting textbooks right into my brain, or wasting away on new visual pleasures, Peggy 3, or even bridging the world of languages through the power of song. Let's try that last one right now, shall we? I just gotta get this silly TV working. 1 or 2 taps ought to do it. Or maybe more? This might actually take a second. Time out. Oh, you're still here. Oh, right. Wasn't there something I was supposed to show off? Something about a... Oh, right. I remember now. So here's a comic book I tried to translate in 2025. Breaking news! A brand new translation from the creator of numerous silly ones you've probably seen on this channel is ready for the world of manga enthusiasts to see and, hopefully enjoy. Terra's Junk Mall is now available to read in English. Check the link below for all your reading pleasantries. I'm here at this beach to get a breather in before I ramble your ear off about what exactly went into the development of this silly translation in the first place. Wah! Wah! Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Alright, that's good enough. No more wasting any time. It's time for me to give you, the viewer, the scoop. Oh, right. Behold, humans of the Nether Sphere. It's Malictory. I've got translation on the mind, and honestly, I've been putting this stuff off for way too long. 2 months to be exact. But I think it's time I actually try to be responsible for once and cap off this whole project. I even have chopped pumpkin snacks and bubblegum soda. Don't they look tasty? I suppose we should talk about it here too. But before that, have a little self-introduction for newbies. Like I already stated, my name is Malictory. I'm a silly robot who currently resides in a virtual festival in an apartment somewhere in Hipsterland. Psst, it's also called Seattle, Washington. I have been making content on and off since 2015, but I didn't really start doing stuff for real until September 2020, when I streamed my OG run of Magical Vacation for the Game Boy Advanced. And from then on, my translation attempt journey began when I found a comic on the website, and from there, I started doing song attempts, other comics, a guidebook, and you guessed it, more songs. Somewhere down the line, I just kind of became the song translation attempt robot thing. And I guess that's okay. So today, I want to talk to you about one of my favorites, that being Terra. Now, until the pandemic, I didn't really know who she was. I think it was my discovery of Touring Love in 2020, which was a song by Nano Akari and Soul, that I finally was able to see her art in action, and I was just like, oh my god, I love this poppy, cartoonish style you've got going. I need to copy it. I need to make it my own. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Art is kind of difficult. More on that later. Somewhere down the line, I was at my new office when I got rehired to the company I'm at, and one night on the train home, I got to thinking, wow, this artist is like super crazy. What if I had a plush I could buy, or a manga I could read? Now that'd be cool. So under that thought process, I went on Malictory and looked for those two things specifically, and what I found was this cute blue-haired little doll thing that fit into the palm of my hand for like $5. And right beside that was this comic called Junk Mall that was serialized on Instagram since 2021 for a bit, and then it was published in a book in early 2023. If I'm translating it right, she said she wanted a story set where you could just throw away your troubles based on their own experiences traveling or previous works or something along those lines. Either way, this story stars Nico, who's a college student working part-time in a mall in the middle of the tropics, which is kind of heavily implied to be Hawaii. One thing I should probably note is this character looks way too much like one of my old model artists. Her name is Raika from the group Ecotone, and they are great. Like, they're so wholesome, and you should absolutely follow them. I know I'm kind of like shilling something else in the middle of this, but you know what? Who said you can't shill multiple things at once? So her shtick is that she has to sell a bunch of unsellable things like a pineapple plush that causes all sorts of trouble, a dog with the word cat stitched to its back, a bear with a drinking problem, a fish with reversible sequins that say 2019 for some reason, and a bunch of other stuff I'm not going to mention because I don't want to spoil. Other characters include Lobby, another store cashier that tries to sabotage Nico whenever she can, and also has like a crazy obsession with junk food. There's Dora, a fanatic for figurines of big beasts with a bottomless pocket, a couple more plushies like a very terse merman, a sadistic girl that whips people that try to play with her, and even a potato chip bag that's all misspelled and jumbled in the brain. What the heck is that about? I took one look at the preview and I knew I had to have it. So then and there, I ordered it on the 12th of December and I received it on the 19th. With it in hand, I flipped through it for a moment and I knew I had to give a translation a shot. I didn't have a notebook until a day after though, so I asked a security guard on the train I take for some post-it notes, and that's where I took my first translation of page 1. And then I later transcribed that on the notebook I got the very next day, which was a little bit more expensive than I would have liked, but you know what? We vibe. And thus began this journey that really didn't take all that long, to be honest. Since November of 2023, I've been trying to work on that Magical Vacation guidebook, and I thought it'd be nice to have something to work on that was just a little bit smaller that people could enjoy, kind of like as a little appetizer for what's to come. I should make a brief note that as development of both projects were done in tandem, over time I grew more and more jaded with what I was doing with the vacation guidebook, and ultimately I just decided it was a better idea to just axe the project altogether. Just so I can give Junkball my full focus. This ended up being a pretty good call, both for the translation's quality and my mental health as a whole, and I really hope that you're able to see that in the finished work. I've done smaller comics before regarding that series, and I wanted to not only branch out and do something new, but also challenge myself to do a different medium of entertainment. Whereas the guidebook was, that. This had everyday dialogue and provided a bigger opportunity to learn new words, new terms, new phrases, that would help me understand dialogue in other media as I go on in life, and this whole translation attempt hobby that I've got going for myself. I'm also just a straight up fan of her work, and there was no English translation already, so me and all the free time I had to give it a shot. I may be the eternal beginner, but I owe it to myself to do it anyways. Then, more fans can enjoy that work and gain interest in their other works, and inspire more translators or fans to rise up and hopefully buy your stuff and make her super flippin' rich. That is the dream. That's the perfect way to support your stands. I'm not crazy, I swear. So, we should probably get started on the process, shall we? We have a few steps in the nair it took, and I have a lot I want to say for each one. And so... as I look back on this first daunting step, there's not a whole lot I can say regarding the 25 days it took me to give an initial translation. Flipping through the pages, I simply just gave it my best effort and hoped if there were any errors, I'd, iron them out later. Things did seem pretty straightforward, but there were a few parts that had me scratching my head, such as when the sound effect text would be written in a super stylized way I couldn't read super well, like for the water game strip on page 7, where some text was so balloony and just exaggerated, I just wasn't able to figure it out until it popped in my head hours later when I was in the middle of work, which is something that, while rare, still bogged down the process whenever it did happen. Another example is the text on the magazine on page 23, which I ended up morphing to sound kinda hip and new in our own tongue so it didn't sound stilted. I should probably take a second to talk about my big focus for this whole project and other projects going forward. Going off of my previous works, I knew I wouldn't be able to make this a one-to-one translation, because if I did, everyone would be talking robots. Bzz, 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 bzz. Sound familiar, doesn't it? And they probably have speech patterns straight out of Google Translate. So, what I opted for instead was something that stayed true to the intent of the original, while also making a few bends in what was reasonable so that it was a perfect kind of middle ground for, people who are localizers and those who are purists. They can come together as friends or something. One such change was the name of one of the MCs. There is a dog named Cat Dog, and his original name was Inuneko, or Dog Cat, which also apparently doubles as an idiomatic expression for worthless things. So what I ended up doing was I opted for Cat Dog because it flowed better on your tongue. Dog Cat, Cat Dog. It flows better. But because I recall there's this TV show where a conjoined cat and dog that was treated like it was worthless, and I was like, oh, that's way too convenient, I should probably use that. So it's not matching the expression one-to-one. The name still brings to mind something seen very unfavorably, at least in the show it's based on, or like something of that nature. One change that wasn't quite the same was one strip on page 12 that involved Setsubun, which is a Japanese holiday that celebrates the coming of spring. That usually involves some rituals about driving away the bad spirits of yesteryear. Since Setsubun isn't really celebrated in English-speaking countries, I wanted to make it one of those general year-end strips instead of the former to kind of generalize it a little bit, while trying to keep the coming of a new season spirit that the original had, complete with all the bean tossing. Page 36 has a story that involves the fish named Humu Humu getting merch on a TV shirt, and Dora remarked on saying that the red one was like 3 times as fast, and I was just like, what? So I did some digging around to see if I missed something, and I realized, oh, it's a Char Azamble reference. Did I say his name right? Char Azamble? Char Aznable? Char Amsterdam. I am so glad I learned about G-Quux at the time, so I knew who this was. But man, that kind of threw me for a loop, because I was like, oh, what if I didn't know? I remember during the part where I translated the Junk Fantasy story arc, I misread the fa on the title as an O because of how it was written down, and I was thinking, what the hell is a Oantasy? Shouldn't it be fantasy? Page 89 has a strip that involves Nico getting sick, and her realization moment is when she looks at her thermometer, but the number reads something that's like, normal. I don't get it. Maybe someone else does. Cause, like, the temp reads 35.2 degrees Celsius, but that's, like, you know, an average temperature. It's in the text. Someone help me out here. How is she distraught? Whatever. One of the last hurdles I had was on page 111, which was called Spirit Horse. So in this strip, the characters are learning about Japanese culture and mentioning how sometimes things like cucumbers or eggplants are dressed up like automobiles to bring departed relatives back. If only for a bit during Oban. This is something I did not change, as they were observing it as if learning about it for the first time rather than something else, so the viewer gets to learn as they do. One thing that did trip me up was when it called one of the characters a second daughter of Oban for trying to mimic a spirit horse, and for the life of me I could not figure out why. My best guess came from a study session I did later that week, when I learned that second daughters in some cultures are expected to bear most of the responsibilities of the house, and it wasn't something I was too familiar with, so I decided to just reword it so that they were a champion of Oban, a la championing the standards of Oban Festival, or something like that. Aside from those examples, I did a couple of footnotes on the side of the pages I translated so that I could remember new terms, words, etc, 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 etc. The only problem was that there were so many new words. Like, what the hell? I'm gonna be spending a while trying to remember all of them, if that's even possible. I think it is. Other people have done it, why can't I? But yes, after 25 days, now counting my days off, or the end of the year because I had a bit of an accident, I got it all done. I even marked off my victory with a silly little drawing. I rarely ever do that nowadays for myself, so it's fun to just do something for myself for once. I closed my book and went to work with a happier mindset for that day, not realizing that my project was only just beginning. But, you know, who cares about that? Let's talk about Pokemon Violet, a game I've been trying to beat since it came out. I got closer and closer with the passing months, but it just wasn't even happening. And even then, I went to take a break between this step and the next. I still couldn't beat it. I'm sure I beat a gym leader or two. My Rambami needed sustenance. So the text mirror step began on February 3rd, 2025, and it ended on May 11th of that same year. This will probably be the longest step of any project I ever work on. It is so tedious. So, after the initial rough translation was all wrapped up, I took a little break so that I didn't lose my head since all that work is a lot of work, let me tell you. So I played Pokemon Violet. I do love the game. I've been playing it since I, bought it. I never beat it, or at least not yet. It is a good break game since it feels like it'll never end, but it eventually did at some point later. We'll get to that. Now this is where I actually had to get a digital copy of the Bloody Book, since I've been rocking my loose copy from Medicati this whole time. There went another $10 to the Bezos wallet, but I had it in digital form and all screen capped too. A little time consuming, but what did you expect? 144 pages. Not, 7. And now, the smear. All it took was removing the bundles of text that's here, there, everywhere, and never just in one consistent spot like you would see in a guidebook or something. You really had to keep your eyes focused in case there was text on the corner of a character, or even blending in the background. The word balloons text was easy peasy, but so much of the same thing gets to you after a while. I had to space this out, it was too much. 10 pages a week, that's all I can do, and only on my weekend. Anymore and I'd burn out, because this step is legit just a bunch of minute tidings that just adds up. I need to be fair to myself. There also isn't much to say about getting rid of text. It's not hard, unless it's outside of a text bubble, because then you have to be careful and smear it off as much as possible so the English translation you plan on putting in eventually can cover it up without looking too tacky. For a beginner, I think I did pretty good. Unless you zoom in and start seeing a lot of the clone parts of the image, because I did do that to make it feel like the OG text wasn't there. There's one strip where it's literally just a bunch of escalators, and there was text all throughout, and with that many patterns, I could only do so much. I really hope you don't notice the sloppiness. Aside from that detail though, I think we're good. I took a good break with the time I had in between those productivity surges. And there I was. I streamed, I played, I heard new songs, and I got sick. How dare I? I did around 3 new song translations around this time, and those were Spika by Lon and Spitz, Semite Aoku by Mare in March, and after 52-ish days, I Wanna Be an Angel in May, for my birthday. I even beat Scarlet and Violet one week in early March. I kinda gave up trying to do everything though after beating Nanchamon and getting the Firefish. What the heck is that thing's called? What the heck is that thing's called? It's like, what, Chiyu? Tinlu? No, Tinlu's the bull moose. I want to mention a little bit of a delay that happened during this point. It was like, what, February 21st? I was just about to finish my translation of Spika when I randomly got up from my break at work, and I wound up losing my balance because apparently an ear crystal got dislodged, and what happened afterwards was 2 weeks of terror. I could not balance myself to stay in motion, and it freaked me out because it's like something that never happened before. I was rocking from left to right, I couldn't focus, and even then I was still freaking pushing myself to stay productive. I wanted to scream the whole freaking time, but I kept going. I slept a lot during those 2 weeks though. For the most part it's gone, but even now, it kinda shows up when I panic too much, albeit in spades. Nowhere near as bad as it used to be. As time passed though, I started working on a little teaser video for my birthday to announce the project as a whole. Man, how I was able to do this, that teaser, and I Wanna Be an Angel all at once to release on the same day is crazy. I'm no machine, but I kinda am. Can't you tell? And then legit, after I finished that freaking video and it went live, like 2 days after I finished the freaking step. Welp. So the second draft began on June 12th and finished on the 27th, and then the final draft began immediately after and then ended on July 2nd. Before that nonsense, we gotta talk about sound effects though. So that actually started the very day that the text smear ended, and what I was originally planning on doing was I was gonna space it out, much like I did with the text smear, where I'd only do like a little bit a week. The month this all went down was actually a huge series of like small experiments for me behind the scenes, and none of those experiments actually blossomed into my next big translation like I originally hoped that they would, so it was nice to get a bit of a breather though before jumping back into the hardest of the hard with this project. I had to do a ton of writing though, I swear, my hands almost freaking fell off, so I gotta be a little bit more careful regarding that. I mean, you all know the older you get, the more you turn into a pretzel. We're all pretzel people at the end of the day. Back to the sound effects though, I didn't really want that to be my big focus during the rough draft, as getting the gist of the story itself was my #1 priority at the time, and we all know how long that took to get down. The sound effects, on the other hand, took about a week and a half to get done, and while most of them require just a simple search up of the phone, they have a couple of comic effect dictionary sites that are all the rage, and that's what I utilized. There were a few effects here and there that just were not bringing anything up. Like, I would search them up and I just could not find a corresponding translation. So, in a panic, I did the one thing I didn't really want to do, and I went with my best judgment. I crafted something that fit the context for the scene. Granted, I didn't do this often. I can actually count on the number of my hands how much I had to do it, and thankfully it was less than 10. But the fact I couldn't give the super duper pure translation I was hoping for was pretty upsetting. So, sorry about that. I tried. By June 12th, I had that laptop that I needed to get started on the second draft, and all I really did was just like polish things up here and there, double check the source material, make sure things were lined up. Sometimes I came across a line that struck me as odd, and I was like, wait, I see where I'm going with this. That's not much of a stretch. Hopefully others can see it that way too. The one thing I want to make sure of is that there's no obscurities between languages so readers can understand why exactly I chose to write in a certain way. There is a joke somewhere about a guy who doesn't want the fish when it's given as a prize, as he's allergic. So I wrote instead that he has fabric dermatitis to be more specific, and then the character would respond with, "Derma, what?" Little touches like that really sell the character and energy that the plot is giving, and I wanted to make certain that that was evoked in the best manner possible. Not all lines are translated, as I later learned, which was kind of frustrating, and also kind of flabbergasting. You'd think I'd have things under control at this point, but here I am finding whole sections not even done. Okay. It's still an issue I had to scramble to figure out, but I figured it out. So, either way, the second draft's done. I immediately went to the final draft, which is just a bit of polishing, above polishing, just to make sure that there were no misspellings, double check the fluidity of character dialogue. Stuff that sounded even an ounce unnatural had to be cut out, and they were, by the time I had this stuff all done, only a few days later. Of course, I didn't stop an issue from bringing some stiltedness back from the dead. We'll talk about that in a bit. So the text insertion began on July 31st, 2025, and it ended on August 27th of that same year. Here we are, the final stretch. This is where things got really serious. I had the laptop ready, specifically for this, and the second draft, and the third draft, but you know what, mainly for this. I knew I wanted to prevent a certain issue that plagued me during Magical Star Sign Guidebook's translation, and that was only working on it at home. And that led to 1 or 2 pages getting done a night, and then having to wait nearly 24 hours just to make more progress, and that was daunting. It was literally living in my head when I was at work, because I was just like talking to my boss, and I was like, I have to get this done, I only have certain pages to get done, but I have to wait until I get home, and it's just so time consuming to worry all the bunch. Blah 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 blah. How I was able to do that in 2 months is anyone's guess. Maybe it's just because there wasn't much text in the actual guide part. That or I grinded and suffered mentally as a result. Probably the latter. Regarding Junkball's text insertion, I thought it'd be easier because, comic book, just hit copy and enter, right? No. No, it wasn't. The first few pages required around 30 minutes or so each, because I was having trouble not only fitting the dang words on the page, but also centering it right. As the pages went on, it got even worse and worse, with more space restraints thanks to the dynamic nature of word balloons and the many forms they take on. Some are long, some are fat, some are barely even bigger than the fingers I'm using to type this damn text at the moment. Thankfully, I didn't have to cut up words between lines that much. Still happened at times, but not too much. Hope it doesn't look too ugly in the end. After a few pages from the beginning, I began to go backwards from the afterword, and I kept going since I knew that every page past page 90 was packed with text and super extensive dialogue in odd places, and I needed to just get that out of the way as soon as possible. This is where I erred, as after that was done, there were still so many pages filled with text and sometimes took almost a day's worth of work. Probably the biggest regret I had during this whole step, and this project in general, to be honest. I had a final draft that gave every character a voice, and it's because of those shifting size restraints that forced me to size that down, and it got me feeling, man, this is what freaking Ted Woolsey probably felt like during his work on like Secret of Mana and the sort. And I started to feel my dialogue just watering down as I had to fit these space restraints. There is no character in the story that this limitation affected more than the mainstay who appears 94 pages in, and that character's name is Carrot. At least I think it is. She's the fancy blue girl who's super prim and proper, speaking in respectful speech a lot. And I tried to match this by making her sound like super high class and dignified. I actually think I might have made her sound a little bit snobbish as a result though. What do you think? With these restraints, I had to make do, and it got worse and worse till she didn't even sound close to how I envisioned her coming off from the get-go. I did get lucky most of the time though, but consistency is kind of super important when it comes to story-based content. All in all though, it was gonna take time. I wasn't gonna get this done in one day, and I had to accept that. If I was lucky, I'd get like 3 pages a day if I just shut up and got to work. That wasn't helped by the fact that I slept a ton throughout this step, and if I didn't nap at all, I'd been done way faster, but the fact that this only took a month is actually kinda lucky, as I thought I'd be done by October if I were only doing 2 pages a day, barring weekends. Even crazier is the fact that I had that sweet magic translation to get done by the 25th, in time for J-Pop Su's 10th anniversary, so I couldn't even work on it every day like I wanted. I had to take some days off to work on assets for that video, though it helps that the translation proper was done a month prior. So, go me! Last note I want to make on this step is I actually did make sure to save the files as PDFs instead of the blurry PNGs that plague the Star Sign guidebook translation, but even then I had the same issues pop up. I guess some things just never change with being funky. So, this step began technically on September 1st, but for reasons I'm gonna get into, we'll just say it started on the 2nd. It actually ended a day later, so it was pretty quick. It wasn't a hard step, but the first day was not very accomplished. For one, I started by seeing if the spelling was right for every page while making sure I didn't miss any Japanese text or comic effects, which, unfortunately, I did. There were a lot of little issues that just kind of made my frustrations kind of spill over. I did manage to warn myself to keep it cool, because life moves on and work still needs to get done when I'm not pacing around my room envisioning a complete project in my head but not working on that IRL. Seriously, step it up! September 1st, I tried to do the QA, capping it off by adding the watermark and crop effect to keep it uniform, but then some pages wouldn't even end up the same size. It's like one image would come up super small on the preview, and then one would come up like super gigantic, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on? What the F? So I tossed that attempt and started again the following day. I checked for spelling errors and effects I didn't notice, and I capped it off with the watermark. And I had a much easier time when I wasn't kicking myself for not noticing things way before. I am human, even if I don't look like it. I do have to be more fair to myself, I think. The following day came the cropping, which took about 8 hours. Before that, though, was page 73's edit, since there was so much text in that strip. Hell, it's in the name! For some reason, that page and many others got blurry with their text, so I had to retouch those up as I cropped the pages, and yes, I cried a ton. I thought saving them as PDFs would prevent this blurriness, but I guess I'm doomed to repeat this hell as long as I use be funky. Or maybe I should have just used an upscaler? No, I won't do that, actually. Thankfully there weren't too many pages that needed those edits. I think it was about 10 or so in total. Hell, one page, the one about Rosa, and especially page 73 got hit with this blur hard. I had to redo everything from nearly scratch, except for the sound effects, and it actually occurred to me during 73's retouch that maybe the sound effects were causing the blur from the get-go, so I think maybe I'll just do those sound effects as a separate step going forward. But either way, I ended things off late on the second day feeling just defeated. I didn't take a break, so my head was frazzled, but I'm happy with myself. This project is essentially done, but I still have the foreword and the title to do, which were something I did off-screen. I'm not gonna mention those. And now we come to the present, where I type what you're hearing me say with this silly blue little character. Do you like it, by the way? It's brand new at the time of this recording. I do have another video that's going up at the same day that this goes up, that's gonna talk more in detail about, like, who put work into it and all that jazz. Look forward to that. But anyways, these 2 days I did QA took so much stress out of me that the following day at work, I was still carrying that feeling around, which not only affected my work ethic, it just made me straight up erratic, and I fumed, and I was just trying to hold myself down so I could stay professional. But by the day after, I was starting to type out these reflections that you've been hearing me say, and it was finally starting to dawn on me that, yes, it's over. I don't have to worry anymore. And that right then, I started to feel like this ease just blast me in the face like ice cream cake or something. Or like, you know, when it's fall and a bunch of wind bashes you in the face. It's kind of like that feeling, honestly. I can breathe. I can breathe. But not just yet. There's a few things I've got to ponder over first. A couple questions just like last time. And the first are... Let's get the obvious one out of the way. I thought doing a comic would be easier because pictures, oh my god, pictures, so much of them, and not much text compared to a guidebook. Dear god, I realized just how wrong I was very fast. Both guides and comic books have their own levels of difficulty. A guidebook's difficulty stems from its length rather than its diction or grammar, since they're textbook basic. It's very easy to understand if you have like a somewhat okay grasp of the language. A comic book's difficulty is based on its dialogue, and while there's not as much, it's still enough and varied to deliver trouble, especially if there's many terms you don't know, kinda like myself. I spent a good deal of time making footnotes of every new word I could, but I think it's worth it to create a reference book whenever you work on something new like this. That way, you can associate this new memory with the new word, and it'll be that much easier to remember. Of course, the text smear stage had its own trouble in the sense that if I spent too much time on it, I would just shrivel up and, like, die. That's why I had to space it out so much. I don't like doing that, but I didn't have a laptop for work at the time, so maybe if I did, I'd be more productive during that stage. Then there's the matter of slowly counting down the number of pages left to do a certain thing. Ugh, it's just taxing on the mind. You know what they say though, good things come to those who wait, and work hard, somewhat. So, my patience did get tested a lot during quality assurance, and going forward, I do actually need to take a step back and breathe a lot. Because just because I didn't catch something the first time, does not mean that there isn't going to be another point in time where I can't fix it later. So long as it's not already published in the print on demand, I should be fine. But hell, even then there's time for the Premiere upload too. It's never too late. Junk Mall will be okay. One thing would definitely be to get a laptop much sooner in the process, so I could not only get the text smear stage done sooner, but also some of the song translations that took my attention away from this. I could definitely take more time getting acquainted with the context of the story instead of feeling like super rushed, because one thing I did miss until the very last step was that the Aftermath strip was actually a continuation of the Junk Fantasy storyline, since Nico was dealing with a bunch of angry kids, and the next strip shows her drinking her issues away with Lobby. I also wish I had just done the sound effects as a separate step, since I started to realize near the end that the blurriness of the art was caused by that, and not the text I inserted like I originally thought. Maybe then I can actually prevent some relettering issues in the future. I did learn a new necessity for future projects like the MV guide or, you know, other things I want to do in the future. Oh, this is probably going to be the last project I do using BeFunky, since I do kind of feel limited with what it offers, and I don't really want to pay like $45 a year just to get more stuff. I need more text options, and I also need it to output a higher DPI. 300 is not enough. Give me 600. Thus, here we are, in present day. I'm really proud of myself for getting 2 big translations out in the world, and hell, even if there was only like, what, 2 or 3 people who read both this and the Star Sign Guide from 2023, working on my little translation attempts, as well as these big ones, with many more to come, is the main reason why I'm even still alive right now. I know it sounds kind of ingenuine, but I mean it. I'll be honest. When I started going to college and took my first Japanese classes in 2015, I knew I'd probably always end up being sorta okay-ish at things, but now I've made a lot of perfectly flawed little pieces that only will serve for me to get better and better as time passes. I am an eternal work in progress. I speak nothing fluently. There's this rush I feel whenever I finish works like this. Like, there is a use I have in this world, and it's this. Like, as long as I get better, there's meaning to still being here, to waking up every morning, and so forth. While the rest of the world continues to walk and walk, I have my little creations that will always be available as long as I breathe. Or as long as DMCA doesn't hit me. Crossing my fingers. I've gotta keep working. I literally have to. Cause I know that there's things in this world I can actually do. There's this, like, rush I've been chasing for forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever, hoping that one day the right people will catch sight of what I create and accept me into the world, and then maybe I can live a more mentally happy life. That's my sole wish at this point. Anyways, I have no intention of stopping now that I'm done with this project. I have a few song translation attempts to work on from groups like Agata Kaden or the recently founded Disaster, Even mentioning this is gonna age the video like crazy. Content's never gonna stop when it comes to me. I'm always gonna be working on something. Even if it's something that never gets seen, like, you know, personal development and all that jazz. How much can I get done by the time I get smacked by a semi? Will I ever reach the masses and reach the soul of someone in the 7 billion human strong world of ours? Will I ever eat anything for dinner aside from potato? Find out next time on Translation Adventures Birthday Edition. What will come out next year, you may wonder? Probably another on cover in a video about making oatmeal cake. Does that have flavor? Someone tell me, I'm scared to try myself. Like with Star Signs Guide, I always try to do a print on demand of my own work since I'm pretty proud of the work I put in. You know, the quality is kind of questionable, but hey, I want to show a physical example of what I've done. And so, bam! I ordered this, not really sure when, but it came on October 3rd, and it was a lot cheaper to buy than the Star Sign Guidebook. For reference, the guidebook was $50 for one copy, and this was like $50 for two. So yeah, I got two. I don't know what I'm gonna do with the second one. Maybe I'll give it to a new friend I make. Maybe I'll just leave it in one of those little libraries in Seattle. Who knows? Anyways, I think I've said everything I wanted to say now, so I'm going back to sleep. You know, it's funny. In the 4 years that I've been doing this whole VTuber stuff, I still don't know how to end a video properly, so I'm just gonna have Kurumi come in and just smack me in the face and make